Each time I prepare to do one of the YouTube uploads, as I reflect back over my thought processes and things that happened to me to cause me to think about one thing or another through the day or through the week, I realize that there was a hand at play in my life, and I feel like it's the Lord's hand. I feel His influence. I feel His promptings and guidance, His forbearance. I feel His goodness, His love. And that's what my prayers are for. As I begin each one of these, I say a little prayer. And sometimes I pray for one thing, sometimes another, but usually it contains those elements that I just mentioned. And I'm grateful for that influence. I am very much aware through these 75 years of my living on this planet that there is much more to me than what you see. You'll probably say, I certainly hope so. There's a spiritual realm that I belong to and you belong to. And for that matter, that the whole earth and everything in it and on it belongs to. Because God's hand is in all things and through all things. I talked about that briefly in an upload that I made when I talked about the light of Christ, what it was. God is omniscient. He knows all. He's omnipotent. He's all-powerful. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere. You might say, well, how can that be? He's just one person. I thought we're taught that he's just one person. And he is. He's one person. But in the spiritual realm, if you understand what the light of Christ really is, it's like your finger being different than your earlobe or your chin. You're all connected. You all have a commonality and purpose, and you vary in. There's a variation in the way things work, but there's a commonality, and I sense that very much, especially when I'm out in nature. And I think that's why I talk so much about the transcendentalists and nature in this and these uploads, is because I just feel something in nature. I realize that's not being very detailed or explicit when I say I just feel something. But it's hard to describe it sometimes any other way. A feeling of peace, a feeling of belonging, a feeling of purpose, a feeling of love. That's kind of how I would describe it. And I think about it often. I reflect back over my life, and I find myself recalling certain feelings when certain things have happened. And I have found, as the scriptures say in 2 Nephi chapter 2, it talks about the need for opposition. When Lehi is talking to Jacob and trying to teach him, he tells about that opposition and the need for it. And I've been fortunate to feel both ends of that spectrum of peace. There's been times in my life when I felt very peaceful, very at ease, very comforted and loved, nurtured. And there's been times when I've been on the other end of that scale and felt the opposite of those things. And yes, there's been times when I felt something in between. And I'm sure you're no different than me when it comes to that. You may be a little different than me in that maybe you've not stopped and thought about it. And maybe you haven't cross-referenced it with scriptures to the degree that I have after having spent a lot of time studying and trying to learn and being exposed to life experiences that have taught me things. I guess it comes with age and more experience maybe than age, but they kind of go hand in hand sometimes. So there's something different about me tonight, if you notice it. I have a white shirt on. I didn't change my hat, but I have a white shirt on. Let me tell you why I decided to wear a white shirt tonight. I decided to wear a white shirt because I've had feelings that I should, that in these YouTube uploads, I should we say dedicate? I guess that's a good enough word. Dedicate some of these to my wife. So anytime I come into these YouTube sessions and start turning the video camera on me and you see a white shirt, you'll know that sooner or later I'm going to be talking about my wife. Her life has touched mine in so many, many ways. She has been such a good influence on me. She has complimented me with an E. If you know what that means, I'm talking about not the kind of compliment that's spelled with an I, but an E, meaning she has completed me. The parts of me that needed to be fixed, she's helped me fix. And she is continuing with that process. I'm not fixed yet. And I appreciate her for that. I recognize it. And as I go into this, to these uploads concerning my wife, you're going to hear me intimate, if not come right out and say that I believe we knew each other in the pre-existence, and that we knew what was going to go on here on earth if we did our parts. I don't think that it was by coincidence that we were born in the same valley and had some of the same backgrounds and experiences, though they were different in some ways too. But I'm convinced that, and again, a lot of it's just feelings. But tonight I'm going, before I get too carried away, because my mind starts to run a dozen different directions when it comes to things that my wife and I have done together through these, what will be this fall, 57 years together. 57. We didn't celebrate our 50th anniversary too much, not like a lot of people do. Our children did a little something for us, and we appreciated that. But it was not a blowout celebration like you see a lot of people having. And part of the rationale, at least in my mind, for that was, first of all, I need to add that my wife doesn't like a lot of attention drawn to herself. And that's one of the reasons. But in my mind, the 51st year deserves a bigger celebration than the 50th, and the 52nd bigger than the 51st, and so on. Since that 50th wedding anniversary, we'll have this fall had 7 others, each adding to the 50th. 57 years of being a part of each other, sharing in the day-to-day and the trials. I hope I can do this without actually breaking down and weeping. I'm a little inclined that way, so forgive me if I do, because these things I'm going to talk about deeply touch my heart. In a way it's hard for me to describe. And so I just let a tear fall here and there. Hope that'll do the trick. I realize it doesn't. But tonight I'm going to talk about our very first meeting. And she lived on the Utah side of the valley. I lived on the Idaho side. We were born in the same month. I'm only about 25 days older than she is. And our very first meeting was not at the high school. We went to different high schools. It was not at the school where we went to school. Our very first meeting was in a baptismal font room. We were baptized the same evening. And we didn't realize it until later, because our birth certificate or our baptismal certificates, and we had them, said different dates, and never thought too much about it. And for some reason, we had them and looking at them, and we thought, hold on, we were born in the same month, which usually they did the baptisms the month following your birthday. So most likely it was in January. I don't have the baptismal certificates right here, but they would have been dated in January, usually on a Saturday evening. And they were different dates. And yet each one of us could remember, when we start thinking about it, she could remember me being baptized, because I told her how there were some special things about my baptism. Maybe I better stop right here and just explain. I told her that my dad had to baptize me 3 times, because either my toe would come up or elbow or something. I don't know. I wasn't in a position that I could see it, but they have witnesses to the baptismal event. And if you're not completely immersed, they tell you to do it again. Well, with my father, they told him to do it again 3 times. You'd have to know my dad to know that upset him a little bit, because he was a little uncomfortable doing things anyway, and then to make a mistake, which I don't think you could really call it a mistake. It's just a thing. But I knew that it had kind of bothered him that he didn't get it right the first time. But he didn't. So I got baptized 3 times. And coincidentally, and I mentioned that, my wife could remember a little boy who was there at her baptism that had to get baptized 3 times. And she tells the story today how she kind of felt sorry for the whole situation, because of the way it played out. And she remembered me from that event. And I remembered her. I can remember where she was sitting. I can remember kind of sort of what she looked like, though I can't get into details, but I remember her face and hair. And she came with an older gentleman, not her father. Her father didn't baptize her. It was a man by the name of Weston, Frank Weston. Almost couldn't remember the name there. Baptized her. And it didn't dawn, like I said, it didn't dawn us until later when we looked at our certificates and started putting two and two together, and she could remember me and I could remember her, and we were the only ones that were baptized that night. And it made sense that we would have been baptized together because our birthdays are in the same month. And it didn't make sense that our certificates would have been dated differently, but they were. So we knew there had been a mistake made on one of our certificates, and I forget which one's right. I guess it doesn't matter. But we could remember each other. I've always said in kind of a joking way, the first time I met my wife was when we got our sins washed off in the same water. Now, there's not everybody that can say that, right? And I realized that you don't actually wash your sins off in the water. Though I hear people talking about it that way, it's a whole different ball game than that. But symbolically, that's what happens. And we went through the same symbolism in the same room, in the same baptismal font, on the same night. And that was the first time we ever laid eyes on each other. I wished I would have known more about what was going to play out in the remaining years of my life. I would have run right over there and kissed her right on the forehead at least, and give her a hug. I really wouldn't have, because I was a little intimidated in those situations, but if I knew what I knew now, I would. I'd just jump for joy all the way out of that baptismal font and all the way into the dressing room and all the way home in the car, I guess. It's profound, really. It is. It's profound. It's profound that we laid eyes on each other that night in that spiritual circumstance. And I'm trying to think of the year that would have been. Let's see, we were born in 49. So it would have been about 19, I want to say 57. It would probably been January of 58. That's when that happened. 58. And then I start thinking, hold on, 58? 58, January of 58. And in 1968, I would be looking at that same girl across the altars in the temple. Being sealed to her for time and all eternity. Ten years. 10 years. And there was a lot happened in those 10 years, and in these next video uploads, I'm going to attempt to try to tell the story a little bit I may get some details wrong and may have to come. I don't know if there's a way to edit these or not, but if there is, I'll probably find it because I know I'll make mistakes. And maybe the little details don't matter so much as the story behind the details. But she was not necessarily my heartthrob that night at the baptismal font. I was more concerned about the frustrations that my dad was feeling for having to baptize me 3 times, I think. But at the same time, when I reflect back on it, it makes me, there's a soft spot that it touches. And I start to realize that, hold on here, God might have had a plan. I'll take the words might have out of it. God had a plan for us from the beginning. And it started in the pre-existence. And the next meeting was the baptismal font at the Paris, Idaho Stake Center. And then it goes on from there. Well, I'm not going to go into more details tonight. This is kind of an introductory story, occasion that I wanted to talk to you about. That will be the first of what I hope to be many of these white shirt episodes. I wear the white shirt because it resembles purity. And there's something pure about my wife. If you really come to know her, you'll come to feel that. And I wish to show her respect. And this is my way of doing that. Wearing a white shirt when I do these uploads about her. I just shake my head in unbelief and gratitude when I think of all that we've been through in 77 years and even 10 years before that at the baptismal font. When I think of all that water under the bridge, I am just touched. Like I said, I hope I can keep from shedding tears because that's how deeply it touches me when I start to talk about it, about her and us, highs and lows, challenges, happy times, sad times, everything in between, understandings, disappointments. Even as I say those words, the memories just flood into my mind. Well, you can see when you see me, when you look at these and you see me with a white shirt, you know I'm going to get a little sentimental. And if that sentimentality is something that you just as soon do without, you'll have to flip on to the next one and find a different upload, because I will be wearing white in honor of my wife of 57 years this fall. And the times we've had together. I feel like it's important that I do this because, as I have mentioned before, I don't know how long I've got on this earth. I don't know especially when I hear about my classmates that went to school with are starting to die off, and it seems like it's every week or every other week. I read about somebody that was just as young or just as old or as I am, and depending on how you think of it, I guess, but they're dying off. And I didn't want to die off without leaving something behind about her. A lot of this stuff has been about me, thee, and charity. But in this case, when you see the white shirt, the thee part of it is going to be my sweet wife. Oh, how I love her. and you in different ways, yes. But we'll talk about different ways. That's what charity is all about, is learning the different ways we can love. So, welcome to White Shirt Night. There'll be more of them coming up. Good night.